But this is a real thing. A generation that doesn't feel. Maybe, can you speak into that a little bit as to how we got there? How did we end up with a generation that is dead on the inside, or maybe doesn't have the ability to feel or experience life, and therefore opting out is a good option for them? And then how do we speak into that?
It's a long journey into falsehood, Louis. I speak on campuses all over the globe, and my colleague is here, Sanj, who just tells his story of living a life of indulgent pleasure, how the first year of university he simply lost his way. There are millions like that. And I think what went wrong when Francis Schaeffer and Everett Koop and all were writing in the 70s and 80s, I was a young undergraduate student. I remember them talking about how we were losing our way. And the way Francis Schaeffer was, he was the first evangelical philosopher of note in recent memory. There were many others, but his name was writ large. And I remember attending a lecture of his, and then years later, when I was teaching in New York, hosted him. And he was talking about the fact that we have lost our reasoning power. We have escaped from reason. And that's why, by the way, this book, The Logic of God, is 52 devotional studies to introduce us to the mind of God. What the brain is to the body, the mind is to the soul. It is not just, the Bible never tells us to have the same brain in us that Jesus had. It tells us to have the same mind, which is also in Christ Jesus. And what really happened in our educational system, we spoiled the minds of young men and women. We introduced paradigms of thinking, autonomy, ideologically driven. It's like the news today. You don't get the news, you're getting ideologies. All you do is 5 people, each one telling you what they think the reality is. And at the end of it, you say, I don't know what's real anymore. Each one telling you what their own thinking tells us. And the fact of the matter is, we evangelicals made a big blunder here. We did 2 mistakes, and I'm part of this whole scene, so I'm not pointing it at anybody. Unlike you, Louis, I say this to you very candidly, people like you are a rarity. I wish it weren't so. I wish it weren't so. But the average person going to church doesn't necessarily get biblical truth. They may get ideas that titillate their imaginations a little bit, that bring certain momentary euphoria, but that's not who you are, and that's not why you are here. You are not just here to tell people to go out and have a nice dinner tonight and feel good about this. You're here to tell people that there is a way that Christ is calling us to, a path that He's calling us to, with His word, which is a light and a lamp to take us along the whole destiny. If more churches preach the word with interest and with attraction, so that the beauty of Jesus and the relevance of Jesus comes to our young people, more young people will be in our churches. Even if they didn't surrender their lives immediately, they'll give you a hearing because they respect that what you have done has been well thought through. So just like the Old Testament, where was the book of the law lost? It was not lost out there, it was lost in the house of the Lord. So this double whammy of the church losing the word and becoming sort of fanciful expositors of positive thinking type thing. If your bone's broken, thinking positively is not going to help you. You've got to get the joint back in order. And the soul is broken, it needs to be fixed. So on the inside, we lost the point of reference of biblical authority. On the outside, we had the academic system hijack all of education. Existentialism failed the generations of the 60s and 70s. And how did they do it? They did it through the medium of the arts and music. So let me give you a brief moment here, okay? You go back to the 11 and 1200s, rationalism was holding sway. You move beyond that and come to the 17 and 1800s, empiricism, the scientific method took hold. And then after that came existentialism. the feeling, the will. So from the brain to the laboratory to feeling, we were trying to find what is the point of reference for truth. And now we are living in postmodernism, which debunks all of these other isms. And the fact of the matter is, what has happened in postmodernism, there's no truth, no meaning, no certainty. So the educational system created a new paradigm. A student in Canada once stood up and said to me, "How can you not say that science is the queen of the disciplines? I am a scientist. I eat, breathe, drink science. Science is the queen of the disciplines." I said, "Let me ask you a question. When you go to your science lab and you come to a conclusion, which of the exact sciences tells you you ought to be honest about your findings?" He just looked at me. I said, so now you're surrendering the queen to the metaphysics of it all. Honesty has got nothing to do with the basic sciences. It's got everything to do with metaphysical thinking, ethical thinking. The difference between America and Europe is precisely this. Please hear me carefully. Gertrude Himmelfarb, professor emeritus at Columbia University, in her book Roads to Modernity, points this out. She said, for Europe, everything was anchored on reason, rationalism. She said, for America and the United Kingdom, it was different. It wasn't reason, it was moral reasoning that was the foundation of these two nations. So moral reasoning is the foundation on which all other reason ultimately has to stand. Because if all you're doing is reasoning without morality, you could become a very dangerous person, because your reasoning could take you in a completely different direction. So we lost the centrality of the word within the place of proclamation. We lost the authority of proper reasoning in our public education. So what have we graduated with? Why did we go to university? Because the Greeks didn't have the answers to find unity in diversity. So they opened the university to find unity in diversity. Now the disciplines don't have any unity in diversities. Each of the disciplines has no idea what the other discipline is teaching. It is faith in God that must provide the unity in the diversity of our disciplines, or we'll have a plurality of capacities with none of them ever coming together for a singular purpose.